Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation on isolating the barriers responsible for the reluctance of students and faculty to enhance their asynchronous online presentations with the addition of audio. I'm Joe Casa, and my co-presenter who's not here today is Kimberly David Chung. I'm going to talk a little bit about the background to the problem, the importance of the research, the perceived barriers to the research when we began it, the methodology for the study, share some of the findings with you, and talk about work that's continuing. I'm also going to try and speak slowly. So the background when I started doing this was University of Maryland University College already had an online teaching environment called WebTyco that gave me the infrastructure for the classroom and the interfaces to the university facilities. However, WebTyco was text mode. Instructors put up text materials and the students read them. And there were problems with technical classes. There was no definitive data, but I had heard that instructors were having problems getting information across using text only. And I had a need to put the Master of Software Engineering degree online fast, because that was the only way it would survive. And at the same time, the University System of Maryland had begun a web initiative in teaching, and I had some resources there. While I was faced with the problem of putting the degree online a year from then, I was faced with the problem of putting my course online within a couple of months. So I didn't have time to research pedagogy. I'm an engineer. I was teaching based on what I had seen from good teachers and bad teachers in my days as a student, which weren't that much earlier because I stopped taking courses just 3-4 years earlier. So I took my class, which consisted of lectures, readings, discussions, and group activities, and converted it to the online environment. And my prime goal was I wanted to use voice. It hadn't been done in the university before. I wanted to use it, and luckily we had a student who could help out. So he did a lot of the initial surveying of the tools that were available to find out what could be done. And for those of you who haven't seen an online environment, this is what it looks like. It's text-based. You open up a thread, and this one happens to be Requirements Workshop. Then you click on the topic, and a space opens up for you to read or post messages, and then anybody else can come in and see it. Now, when I added the voice to the class, I also offered the written text, so the students could have it both ways. Some of the students loved the audio. For the first time at a distance, they could actually feel as if they were in the classroom. Others preferred the text mode because they wanted it for commuting on the metro or on the bus. And while that was going on, I was also doing some other research, and I developed a web conference for students to use in putting together their presentations, because a conference session like this and a classroom session are very similar. And some of the students produced audio enhanced presentations over the next 2 or 3 semesters, but the faculty and members of the web initiative in teaching at the University System of Maryland mostly ignored what I'd been doing. And here was I with this wonderful new technology that you're seeing and hearing now, and nobody was interested. So why didn't it catch on? Well, it sort of did. In the summer of 1998, the students thought that they would get extra credit for it. So 21 out of 50 students struggled through the poor instructions and actually produced audio. And in the spring of 1999, I gave my face-to-face class in systems engineering the opportunity to make an asynchronous presentation like this, and 3 students took me up on it. In the fall of 1999, I told the students in the software maintenance class that it was optional, so only 1 out of 17 bothered to do it. In the spring of 1999, it was required. So in the student project class, which is a collaborative working environment software engineering project, they did it. No questions asked. And again in the software engineering class, it was required. 16 out of 20 did it, and the other 4 had various reasons for not doing it. So the question became, in the fall of 1999, why didn't those 16 students do it? And I put a survey question on the final exam to find out. Now the research is important for various reasons. The critical reason was we needed the audio enhancement because there were problems in the text mode, and I knew that the audio mode worked from the face-to-face classroom. And in common with other distance mode advantages, there's reuse potential. You can take a module and stick it into another one, either an asynchronous or a face-to-face class. And my requirements workshop, which is on my website, has been used in other classes, including a face-to-face class. I taught multiple sections of a class online at the same time with a lot less preparation time. And also important, the universities have difficulty locating qualified instructors in software engineering, and that's another paper. And here's one reason I found out since I came here. It is a lot easier to make a foreign language presentation asynchronously like I'm doing now. I have made a presentation in a foreign language to me, so I know how difficult it is, and I'm sitting in this conference watching a lot of people from Finland trying to communicate in English with difficulty when they could very easily switch to Finnish, and the data rate would go up and the communications would be so much easier, yet you are all sticking to English, and if I was wearing a hat, I'd take it off to you. But think of this, you can sit in your office or in your home, prepare your presentation, you have a dictionary, you can concentrate on one slide at a time. You don't have to think on your feet in front of an audience or read in a monotone a prepared speech. And the audio provides a superior product with respect to the text-only classes, and you can proof it and edit it before you post it in the classroom, and you can time it. When I prepared this presentation, I was able to edit it, real word processing, and make sure it fit in the 15-minute time slot. And a very important reason was that it was alright for me to do it, but if I couldn't institutionalize the process so that the other instructors would do it, then there's little benefit to the university. And I think it's easier to produce a quality lecture for asynchronous delivery than it is to deliver it in the classroom. Have you ever come out of a lecture and said, "Oops, I forgot something"? Well, after you've prepared a lecture like this, you can actually go back in it and edit it. Or you can have your notes in front of you and you're not concerned with class interaction while you're preparing your lecture, so you can focus on one activity at a time and do it properly. So what were the barriers? Well, before I asked the questions of the students, I had a feeling that it was the difficulty of learning something new, the time it takes to learn it, and the fear of failure. The barriers were only present when producing the audio was an option. In the classes where it was required, the students complied. So the study methodology was as follows. Survey the students using questions in the final exam, Now my students are postgraduate and they're working full-time and studying part-time, and then I do a test in 2 different conferences, and I have done some research on using this technology, or rather experimentation on using this technology in conferences for the last 2 years. The conference in Australia, Distance Education and Open Question, which is in 2 weeks, and the CT 2000 Systems Engineering Test and Evaluation Conference in November. So in MSWE 648, the students were asked an open-ended question. If you didn't produce an audio presentation, why not? What was the difficulty? If you did produce one, what difficulties did you experience, and what was easy? This was a question on the final exam, so they had to answer it for points. And these were the responses. 5 students said they had no microphone. A sound card was required for the subject, but a microphone wasn't. 4 students said they didn't have the time to do it. Another 4 said it sounds difficult and time-consuming. 3 of them said the truth, it wasn't required for the assessment, so they didn't do it. 2 of them said they didn't know how to use the software, and presumably were not willing to learn. 2 had equipment problems. 1 didn't like the sound of her own voice, and the other one says it wasn't applicable to work. So what does that mean? For the distance learning conference, we provided instructions which are better instructions than the students had. We provided the software platform, which was constructed by students as a final project in spring of 2000, and it's up there and running on this website. And there are no takers at this time. The idea was to use the web forum as a forum so that in certain sessions people could watch the presentations asynchronously and then come to the conference and spend the whole session discussing it. And nobody has taken it up, and I hope to find out why at the conference in 2 weeks. In the Systems Engineering Test and Evaluation Conference for November, the situation is different. We're not dealing with educators, we're dealing with engineers. And they were offered an option for making distance mode presentations. The idea is to make a presentation like this and then phone in and be available for a question and comment over the telephone. I've already received 1 presentation, but that was one of my students upgrading her paper from a class presentation. But I do have interest by 2 other people so far, and watch the website. You'll see it. So in summary, I'm sharing these experiments and their results with you. I talked a little bit about the background to the problem and the importance of the research, the perceived barriers and the results, which are still open, the methodology that basically says when the students are required to do it, they do it. But why don't faculty adopt it? The questions are still open. Fear of change, or too busy doing work the way we're doing it now to take up something else. I shared the findings and a little bit of the continuing work. So thank you for staying till the end of the presentation. My presentation will be on my website. You can reach me at the email address shown here or on the different websites. If you want more information about producing asynchronous audio, look at my University of Maryland website and click on the Asynchronous Distance Education button, and all the information is there. If you do create audio, I'd like to hear from you. So, any questions or comments?